I had moved out, and my mother-in-law was now living in the house. One day, she called me and said, "It must be hard not having a place to call home, but hang in there." I wasn't interested in having a conversation, so I just replied with a simple, She kept talking, and at one point she said, "Enjoy your life in your new home." I replied, "Yes, thank you, and please don't come back to mine." Then she said something that surprised me. "You'll be getting a divorce anyway," and hung up. Instead of feeling angry, I felt unexpectedly happy. Standing there at the airport, I clenched my fist in a small victory and walked away with a spring in my step. My name is Emma, and my husband, David, was sent to work abroad right after we got married, so we had to live apart for a while. We had been dating for 5 years and had even lived together, so I trusted him completely. I wasn't worried about him being unfaithful. I just hoped he stayed healthy. Everything would have been fine if it weren't for my mother-in-law, who decided to move into our house. David's mother had a traumatic past. She was cheated on by his father, who then left her. When David went abroad, she took it upon herself to keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't cheat on him. Without asking, she moved into the house, making my life miserable. I asked David to help, but his mother refused to leave. She would say things like, "David trusts you too much. I know you'll cheat." She even refused to cook for me, only making food for herself, while using the groceries I had bought. When I complained, she would accuse me of having dinner with someone else. Even if I came home late from work, she would assume I was cheating. It reached a point where the constant accusations made me physically sick from the stress. I begged her to leave, telling her how much I loved David and that I wasn't cheating. David, too far away to come home, tried to talk to her, but she just responded with, "You must really want me gone. You must be cheating." I could only sigh. One day, on my day off, I went to meet my friend Abby at a cafe. Of course, my mother-in-law accused me of cheating again and decided to follow me, thinking she would catch me in the act. She wasn't even subtle about it, hiding behind lampposts and the brick wall outside our house. It was ridiculous, but I ignored her. Abby, who has been my close friend since school, met me at the cafe. As we chatted, I noticed a flash of light. My mother-in-law was taking pictures of us. Abby, who has a strong, street-styled appearance with a short pixie haircut, looked a bit androgynous, and I joked that my mother-in-law probably thought she was a man. Abby found the situation hilarious. To tease my mother-in-law, she leaned closer to me and even held my hand a few times. Every time she did, my mother-in-law's camera flashed, as though she had finally found the proof she had been looking for. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. After a while, Abby and I did some shopping before parting ways. Naturally, my mother-in-law continued to follow me home, hiding behind lampposts again, as if I wouldn't notice her. I even played along at one point, running ahead quickly as if it were a game of red light, green light. She would scamper off to hide whenever I did. When I got home and began taking off my shoes, my mother-in-law rushed in behind me, completely out of breath. Proudly, she showed me a disposable camera and exclaimed, "Emma, I finally have proof of your cheating. I'm sending all of these to David, so be prepared." I shrugged and responded, "Oh, really? Good luck with that." She didn't like my calm response and continued to buzz around me like an annoying child, saying, "Are you okay with this? It's proof of infidelity. Your face and his are both clear in the photos." I just kept calmly replying, "That's fine." It was unfortunate that Abby's androgynous appearance made her look like a man in the photos, but David had met Abby many times before we got married. Even if my mother-in-law sent the pictures to David, he would likely recognize Abby as just a friend. While dealing with my mother-in-law's childish behavior, I had to prepare for a business trip overseas. Unfortunately, it was to a different country than where David was, so I wouldn't be able to see him. I let my mother-in-law know about the trip, not expecting her to care. However, in her mind, the trip turned into a romantic getaway. As I packed, she smirked and said, It'll be a big problem if you come back pregnant from your romantic getaway. David hasn't seen you in a while, so it'll be hard to pretend the baby is his. Her imagination was so ridiculous that I didn't even bother arguing. I just said, yes, but it's a business trip, not a romantic getaway, and left for my trip. My work trip was busy and hectic, and time flew by. When I finally returned to the U.S., I was exhausted. I planned to buy some sweets at the duty-free shop before heading home. So I sat on a bench to rest for a moment. That's when my phone rang. It was Abby. Hey, Emma. Welcome back. There's something I need to tell you, she said. Your mom came to our company. I was confused because Abby's family runs a company, and it's not the kind of place just anyone visits. When Abby told me my mother-in-law had shown up there, my blood boiled. But Abby handled her well. After explaining the situation, Abby asked if she had gone too far. I laughed and told her, no, you did just right. After hanging up, I was preparing to leave the airport when I received another call. After I returned from my trip, my phone rang again. It was my mother-in-law. Without any pleasantries, she immediately launched into her usual accusations, her voice dripping with smugness. Emma, you should be back from your affair trip by now. Did you enjoy yourself? She asked, clearly pleased with herself. I didn't even bother getting riled up anymore. I replied in a flat tone. It wasn't an affair trip. It was for work. And no, I didn't particularly enjoy it. Ignoring my response, she continued, her tone gleeful. Well, I've already sent David the photos as proof of your cheating. I see, I responded, completely indifferent. At this point, I wasn't surprised by anything she did, but she wasn't done yet. Oh, and by the way, she added, almost as if savoring the moment, I've moved out of the house. It's gone now. I sold the old place. So you must be struggling with nowhere to return to. Her words oozed satisfaction, as though she had won some grand game. I replied with a simple, ha. Barely interested, she let out a laugh before adding, enjoy your life in your new house. Thank you, and please, never come back to our house, especially since we'll be divorced soon. I said, not holding back anymore. She finally hung up after that. Standing there at the airport, I felt no anger at all. In fact, I felt joy. I had done it. I was finally free. After hanging up, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. My mother-in-law, the woman who had caused me so much chaos, was now caught up in a mess of her own making. With a small fist pump, I walked out of the airport with a light step. When I returned to the house, I expected to see it gone, but instead, the house was still standing. It wasn't quite the same, though. Most of the furniture was gone. I could only assume my mother-in-law had taken it, and honestly, I didn't care. I saw it as a severance fee for all the stress she caused me. Without wasting any time, I called a locksmith to change the locks on the front door, ensuring that even if she tried to return, she wouldn't be able to get back in. Once the new locks were in place, I lay down in the empty living room, feeling more comfortable and free than I had in years. Alone in the house, I made another little fist pump and shouted, I did it. The joy of finally being free was overwhelming. The next day, I received another call from my mother-in-law. But this time her tone was different. There was panic in her voice. What's wrong? I asked, already sensing her desperation. Her voice trembled as she explained, actually, I thought I sold the house, but it turns out I didn't. I borrowed money without realizing it, and now the debt collectors are coming. It's really scary. I stifled a laugh. That must be terrifying. I said, my tone laced with sarcasm. She continued, her voice filled with fear. Apparently, the company she had gone to, thinking it was Abby's family's real estate business, also had a shady side. Abby later told me that this company was involved in loan sharking. My mother-in-law had unknowingly signed a promissory note instead of selling the house, agreeing to repay a huge debt, $1,000 every single day. Now, she was in a full-blown panic. Please, you have to help me, she begged. The debt collectors are pounding on my door at dawn. It's terrifying. I can't sleep, and I don't have much money. I used everything I borrowed to buy a new house, so I don't even have any savings left. Please, transfer $10,000 to my account every week until I can pay off the debt. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Do you really think you'll ever be able to pay off that kind of debt? I asked. She stammered, but then tried to push another plan. But if you combine your income with David's, maybe. I cut her off. Even if we combined everything, it's impossible to send you that much money. I'm sorry, but your only choice is to work hard and earn it yourself. Her disbelief was palpable. What? As if there's a job out there where I can earn $1,000 a day, she exclaimed. I couldn't resist a sarcastic suggestion. Why don't you talk to the company you borrowed money from? They might be able to introduce you to a good job. Much to my surprise, she took me seriously. Really? Then I'll go and see, she said before hanging up. Later, Abby filled me in on what happened. Apparently, my mother-in-law had marched straight into the company and asked, I have no choice but to work because I have no money. Is there a simple and easy job where I can earn more than $1,000 a day? I could only imagine the chaos that followed. Abby and her team eventually found her a job, but it wasn't anything like what she had in mind. My mother-in-law was now working at a company where the employees lived in rundown shacks that doubled as dormitories. The work was grueling, with long hours day and night, including for the elderly. My mother-in-law was working herself to the bone there. The dormitory was surrounded by barbed wire, making it look more like a prison than a living space. The workers were transported to and from their jobs blindfolded in a van, so they had no idea where they were going. She would only be free once she had paid off her debt. If that day ever came, Abby told me this with a smile, but honestly, it made me feel uneasy. Even though she was a good friend, it was unsettling to think about my mother-in-law's fate. Several weeks after my mother-in-law disappeared from my life, David returned from his overseas assignment. When I told him everything that had happened, he just shrugged. There's nothing we can do about my mom, he said, with a resigned tone. All we can do is hope she lives a long life from a distance. It turned out that David had never really liked his mother. He had tolerated her because she was family, but after she repeatedly accused me of cheating, he had lost all patience. When I asked him if he had ever received the so-called proof of my infidelity, he paused for a moment, as if remembering, and then pulled out a photo from his bag. That's Abby, right? He asked, holding up the photo. I have no idea why my mom thought this was evidence of anything. I laughed. The photo my mother-in-law had taken, one of Abby and me, with Abby playfully making a peace sign, actually looked more like a stylish, candid shot than anything incriminating. Abby, with her distinctive pixie haircut and strong presence, made the whole scene feel like a fun memory. David smiled and added, I had a big argument with my mom over the phone. I told her I'd cut ties with her if she kept accusing you of cheating, but she wouldn't listen. It really frustrated me. I brought home the photo she took because, despite the situation, I thought it was a good shot. We both laughed, grateful to finally have some peace. David and I owed a lot to Abby, and I suggested we visit her soon. Just make sure not to sign any documents she might ask you to. I joked, referencing the mess my mother-in-law had gotten herself into. David chuckled. I'll never sign anything like that. Finally, David and I were able to enjoy our lives together like newlyweds. We didn't know what had become of my mother-in-law after that, but neither of us had any interest in finding out. Our lives moved on, and we embraced the happiness we had long been denied. Soon after, I gave birth to our first child, and David and I spent our days in blissful peace.